What's going on? My name's Roldy, and welcome to the first discussion video on this channel. I'm not really sure what else I should say here, so let's get started. So before we begin, I just want to say that I'm not a developer, and I don't know what's best for the game. But I can speak for what I want to see in the game, and I want to see a new skill added to Old School RuneScape. One that actually interacts with the game world, and feels like it belongs.
Stop right there, criminal scum!
Now, before you scamper off and hit that dislike button, hear me out. Yes, the word need is strong, and there's many players who are staunchly against adding a new skill into the game for fear that it would alter the old school feel of RuneScape. With memories of summoning and dungeoneering still burned fresh into my mind, I can't say I blame them. How do you add something new to the game without completely altering its identity? Is it even possible? Well, let's take a closer look.
What is this?
Is this good or bad?
I don't like change!
So, to answer that, let's take a trip back to 2008. Summoning had just dropped into the game, and it didn't take long for the player base to realize just how much power creep came along with that. So, you had things like the Bunyip and the Elemental Titans and the Unicorn Stallion, which could heal you on the fly, as well as the Pack Yak, which gave you 30 extra inventory spaces and the ability to send items to your bank, without being at the bank. Needless to say, it was wildly overpowered. Kinda cool though, but still. Fast forward a bit from 2008 to April 12th, 2010. Dungeoneering is released into the game, and overnight it becomes RuneScape's most controversial skill. For some, it was an awesome addition to the game that added the closest thing to a typical MMO-style dungeon to RuneScape, in the form of a skill that was trained by completing procedurally generated rooms and dungeons. Effectively, that added a whole new element to the game. But for some, it effectively locked high-tier combat weaponry behind a skill that was completely detached from the rest of the game. An argument could always be found between someone saying it was a great skill, and someone saying it shouldn't be a skill at all, but rather a minigame. Both of these skills changed the face of RuneScape more drastically than any skill that came before them. Summoning trivialized most of the difficult content in the game, and Dungeoneering added ludicrously OP weapons and moneymakers, looking at you, Frost Dragons, that forced players to do a skill that, let's be honest, was very detached from the overall game world. And I'm kind of in the camp that it should have been a minigame instead of a skill. Or something akin to the Gauntlet like we have today, where you got real loot from it instead of points and experience. Because that just didn't feel like RuneScape. But with all that being said, change can be a pretty good thing as well. Look at raids for a modern example from Old School RuneScape. Raids were an entirely new concept to the game that the community absolutely loves. I love them, you love them, he, she, we love them. But they added a level of power creep to the game that's on par with or greater than Dungeoneering. Just look at the Twisted Bow. So, what's the difference? Let's take a journey even further back in time.
Wake up, bro. It's 2006, and we need to get on your dad's laptop. Cursed you is about to get 99 construction, and he's throwing a massive house party.
It's May 31st, 2006, just 1 week before the infamous Falador Massacre. People who have never even played RuneScape a day in their lives have heard about the Falador Massacre. And what was the culprit behind one of the darkest yet most iconic days in RuneScape history? Construction. The hype behind the race to 99 was real. It could just be my rose-tinted glasses, but I was on the edge of my seat wondering how Zazima wasn't winning. Then the hype for the new skill was eclipsed by an event so big that it rippled all the way into free-to-play and to MMOs worldwide. The Falador Massacre. For months, all you would hear players talking about was that single event. It brought the community together in a way that hasn't been replicated since. I'm not here to explain the Falador Massacre. There are plenty of other creators who will do it far better. But I do want to point out the sense of community it brought out amongst the player base. Jumping back to modern Old School, and the closest thing we have to that is definitely raids. For a lot of players, it gave them the kick in the pants they needed to go and actually join a guild and expand their interaction with the community just so that they could experience this new content. However, that really only applies to people if they're at endgame content already. And unfortunately, it alienates a decent chunk of the player base who's not. I'll confess myself that I haven't done these raids myself yet for two reasons. One, I wasn't playing when they came out because Path of Exile is very addictive. And two, I've been playing on my Ultimate Iron Man, who's not quite at endgame, and I restricted him to Magic. Shameless plug for my series, go check it out. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's cringe, but it was a lot of fun to make, so Season 2's coming out, it's just around the corner. Keep an eye out for that. What was I talking about? Right, anyway, as I was saying, those who aren't at endgame on the account they're currently playing yet don't really benefit from the amazing updates that they've been adding. And if we want Old School RuneScape to grow, it's important to have new and exciting things for new players to experience alongside the veterans. And just what massive update could the devs add that any level player could enjoy?
What are your woodcutting levels? Nice.
Almost every skill in the game can be done by a player at level 3. Skills are the backbone of Old School. Half of the game is grinding skills like it's a 9 to 5, and the other half is reaping the benefits from grinding those skills. It creates a satisfying game loop. But it's been a really long time since players got to be satisfied by skilling. Sure, the skill bosses are a fine addition, and personally I love Fish Tot, but they didn't really add any new interaction to the game. And what do I mean by this? Every skill boss is a self-contained encounter that has a negligible impact on the game overall. But Roldy, I hear you say, isn't that how we preserve the identity of the game? To that I answer, is it possible to integrate something new into an existing game without altering how the game feels? The most basic thing that I can think of are the expansions from Skyrim. Each expansion added tons of new content, but all of that content was worked into existing skills. For example, when Dragonbone armor was added, you didn't get a whole new skill called Dragon Forging. You needed better smithing to craft it, just like every other armor in the game. And you can't tell me Skyrim and its expansions were bad. I mean, come on. They sold the game 7 times over. My point is, the key to adding a new skill, or any update to Old School for that matter, is to add something to the existing systems, and not only subtract from them. Let me try and explain. Let's look back at Dungeoneering. Dungeoneering required you to have a very high level in almost every skill if you wanted to fully explore each dungeon. But having a high Dungeoneering level did not benefit each of the skills you needed to train it in order to get the most from Dungeoneering. Combine this with the fact that the only way to train it was to go to one place, Daemonheim, go into instance after instance over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and what you're left with is a skill that half the player base feels like is detached from the rest of the game. Now, for comparison, let's talk about one of the most useless skills in the game, Fire Making. Does Fire Making add anything new to other skills? No, but it also doesn't require any other skills to train, so we're still at an even trade-off. So let's broaden the scope. What does Fire Making add to the game? Well, for one, you can light fires anywhere that's outdoors in RuneScape. Also, you can light light sources to enter certain caves, you can cook food on fires, there's colored cosmetic fire lighters just because why not? Fire making is used during a lot of quests. There's probably even more that I'm forgetting, but the key fact is that all of this is implemented throughout the game world, whereas Dungeoneering was just completely self-contained in the northeastern corner of the wilderness, and after going there once, you were given a ring that lets you teleport there infinitely. You can apply this logic to every skill prior to Dungeoneering, including summoning, and the list of things that they added to the overworld of RuneScape gets bigger and bigger and bigger the more useful the skill is. The TLDR is, prior to Dungeoneering, every skill meshed into the game, whereas Dungeoneering was its own self-contained activity within the game. If they're going to add a new skill, how can they blend it into what already exists?
I'm disinclined to acquiesce to your request.
So before diving into that, I should probably mention that a proposal for a new skill is nothing new to Old School. In fact, they polled 3 different skills: Sailing, Artisan, and Warding. And I'll level with you. I voted yes to sailing, no to artisan, and yes, regretfully, to warding. All three of these skills failed their poll. Sailing failed at 67.9%, artisan failed at 56.6%, and warding failed after being polled 3 times at 66.4%. So, why did they fail? Well, let's tackle the low-hanging fruit first, artisan, because it just looked boring. Essentially, artisan was going to be Slayer, but for skilling. And going to kill X of whatever creature is already tedious enough. And, I'll be honest, going to craft X of U longbows sounds dire. Now, how about warding? Warding kind of just felt like crafting 2.0, and it didn't really feel like a new addition to the game. On top of that, it also felt like it was being added almost exclusively as an item sink for high-tier items, which the game does need. But when they add a new skill to the game, it has to be a skill first, and an item sink second. And lastly, that leaves sailing. So why did this one fail? Okay, so we're now 11.5 minutes into the video, and I'm now just getting to the point. The reason sailing failed, in my opinion, is twofold. One, the player base wasn't quite ready at the time, but as of now, there's over 16,000 people that have a max cape. I think it's time to grind again. And reason number 2, the proposal, if I'm honest, wasn't very good. I don't think the team conveyed the skill in the right way. From my own reading of the posts, I see things I like, some things I don't like, and a whole lot of shit in the middle that just leaves unanswered questions. So, sit back, crack your 6th beer, and let old Roldy try and fix this skill. Alright, really quickly, I'm gonna go through their proposal. So, sailing would be trained through exploration, navigation, and shipbuilding. The fastest XP would be out at sea, exploring. Top XP is achievable solo, so you don't need a group. All account builds viable, pure skillers and irons. Free-to-play availability, that's kinda cool. New areas, many of which ended up getting added anyway. Integrates with existing skills like smithing. Move your ship around like your player, so you control your ship with click to move. Random encounters at sea, pirates, krakens, underwater caves. More underwater content. And it was all proposed to be released within 4 to 6 months of the poll.
Hey, that's pretty good.
So what gives? We're gonna have to dive deeper. If we dig through the old dev blogs, we can see the cracks start to form. Mistake number 1, the shipbuilding. No, wrong. We don't want NPCs doing the work for us. That's too similar to what player-owned ports were, and is an immediate red flag for me. By the way, I did get full Superior Tetsu, so I'm familiar with what the ports used to be. I don't know what they're like now, but regardless. Problem 2, exploration would be the majority of the skill. That sounds a bit like dungeoneering to me, which I've already stated should be more akin to what the Gauntlet is, or a minigame, with in-game loot rather than points and experience. And problem number 3. They mention all these potentially interesting ideas, but the descriptions are so vague and uninteresting that the ideas essentially lose all meaning. Kinda like me trying to rework this skill. But seriously though, just read this. Kraken encounters. You've seen what the Kraken can do in a dank cave. Now it's time to test your luck out at sea. They weren't even enthusiastic enough to put an exclamation mark there. So with that being said, it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. So I've given this a bit of thought, and I think the best way to go about this is to throw away the old proposal and build a new one from the ground up. First, let's talk about the most important thing, how to build your ship. The level of ship customization could be more expansive than your player-owned house. From hulls to masts, everything will be customizable in 2 ways. First, the obvious one will be the materials. As you level up sailing, you'll be able to fashion higher and higher tier logs into long planks. These planks will be made from all the logs that aren't used during construction, with the exception of normal and oak logs. From 1 to 15 sailing, you would use regular and oak planks the same as construction, up until level 30, where willow long planks will become available. You would make these planks much the same as you would now, by either going to the sawmill or casting plank make on the appropriate logs. As you use better and better materials, you'll find yourself needing stronger and stronger nails. Basically, redwood planks would require the use of rune nails. You may find that you need certain items such as holy or unholy artifacts, Bandosian sigils, or Armadillian decor to complete certain parts of your ship. These items will be obtained by dismantling uniques found all throughout the game. And the second form of customization would be variations on all the objects on your ship. For example, would you like a speedy hull allowing you to move from point to point faster at the cost of hull integrity? Or do you take the slow and cumbersome sturdy hull offering for greater protection from the perils of the sea? From stem to stern, all the key components of your ship would be customizable. Cannons, ladders, sails, storage, crew size, you name it. Even the side rails would have options. So, how does one train to a point where they can give the Black Pearl a run for its money? If we break down sailing into gathering skill versus production skill, it falls somewhere right in the middle, kinda like farming. There'll be two main ways to train sailing. The first is the XP-oriented side of building parts for your ship, kinda similar to construction, but vastly more expensive. All you have to do is gather the type of planks you need, buy a ship, and start building away. Stop off and chat with several new NPCs throughout the game to see if they have any special contracts available to complete. Completing these will give you juicy rewards like old XP lamps, caskets full of riches, or possibly a chance at the rare Captain's Garb. Building ships and ship parts would serve as the production side of the skill, and as such, the more cash you burn, the more XP per hour you get. Simple as that. Cause let's be honest, a lot of players won't even look at a new skill unless they can use their vast wealth to get over 500k experience an hour. So if you have cash to burn, you can expect to get your max cape back in about 25 hours. Honestly, not too bad for a Bible 99. But what about the gathering side of sailing? Well, this is where actually exploring the seas of Gielinor in your mighty vessel comes in. While the meta for training will be to sink hundreds of mils into long planks and simply buy the levels, the reward for training is the exploration. As you level up sailing, you'll be able to unlock new areas to explore, treasures to collect, and trials to overcome. First things first, how will you even be able to explore? Well, once you built your ship, simply board your ship and set sail. Moving your ship is as easy as moving your character, where essentially your ship becomes your player model while at sea. It sounds simple enough, but where can you explore? As far as the eye can see, honestly, all of the waters of Gielinor can be traversed. Except for, small rivers for obvious reasons. So, if you can go everywhere, how do you gain experience? Scattered throughout the seas, you'll find new areas to explore requiring various levels in sailing. From hidden coves to island chains to name just a few, these areas will consist of various activities that will gather useful items for not just the sailing skill, but for all the skills throughout RuneScape. The higher the sailing requirement, the more valuable the items will be. No shit. The key takeaway here is that exploring would be the slower experience gathering side of sailing, and shipbuilding would be the money sink production side of sailing, yet still affordable at the lower levels. So before diving into new items, I want to further flesh out what some of the activities would be. First, I've already talked a bit about shipbuilding, but let's lay out what that actually entails. First, you'll need appropriate materials. For the base parts of your ship, like the hull, the deck, the mast, etc., you'll only need planks and nails. The stronger the plank, the stronger the nails you need. For example, redwood long planks would need rune nails. Sorry. The actual process of building your ship would be similar to construction, but less stand in one tile and more akin to what mahogany homes are. So a quick rundown. You go to the shipyard, buy your ship from the shipmaster for 1k like a house, and from there you make your way to the slipway. The slipway will take you to a POH-style instance where you can begin constructing your ship. You'll notice a frame hotspot where you'll be able to select the hull style. Once you build the frame, you'll see a whole bunch of new hotspots appear around the frame where you'll need to construct the sections of your hull. After building a section, a timer similar to the Tears of Guthick's timer will appear above it, signifying when that section is complete, at which time you'll see the experience drop. But wait, don't worry, you'll be able to hire plenty of crew to speed up that process. Aside from the basic components, expect to have some part of every skill be used aboard your ship. Fire making for lanterns, smithing for cannons, crafting for sails, etc. Once you have a ship that you can write home about, it's time to head out to sea. As mentioned before, there'll be a whole bunch of new areas scattered around the waters of Gielinor for you to explore. These areas will provide a small amount of sailing experience and a small amount of other experience depending on the activity in the area. To give a specific example, at level 30 sailing you'll unlock the Isle of Souls Shoals. When arriving at the entrance to the shoals you'll see a barrier similar to the barrier at Soul Wars itself. If you're over 30 or more in sailing, you'll pass right through. If not, a message saying you are not skilled enough to navigate these waters pops up, shooing you away. Once inside you'll notice long fishing spots in the water, and if you've come prepared with your tow net, you can trawl these waters in search of a whole new class of fish, the tropical fish. These would range in fishing requirements from level 1 for clownfish all the way to level 90 for barracuda. And why is this special? Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, tropical fish would also function like caramboins do as combo food, with the coveted barracuda healing up to 20. Because why not? If fishing isn't your thing, don't worry, there'll be plenty of other new resources to gather to help you in your travels all throughout the world. And the best part is, anyone at any level can experience this content together as a community, including our friends over in Free-to-Play. But what if you're looking for something with a little more randomness to it? Well, not a problem. As you go around the open waters of RuneScape, you'll come across random events. They're completely optional, of course, but every 5 to 12 minutes or so, you'll trigger a random event similar to the existing random events that are already in the game. These will range from fending off pirate attacks, hunting down criminals, treasure map hunts, and even SOS rescues, just to name a few. If you're lucky, or unlucky, you may find yourself face to face with Carthoon, the Kraken of legend. Somebody help me with a better name. Rip-offs aside, Carthoon would function as the sailing skill boss, and as such you'd be able to take him on at any level. Now, before even jumping into how I think this fight should go, I'm just going to say that I don't even know how possible this is going to be from a technical standpoint. But here's my idea anyway. So, when encountering Carthoon, your combat style options tab will turn into the command options tab. And you'll see a whole bunch of icons representing your crew members. And what you do is you simply click on that icon like it's a magic spell, and then click on the object you want that crew member to go deal with. Whether it's a broken mast, or a tentacle that slithered on board, or to attack the boss and do some damage. There's still so much more detail I could go into, but I want to move on to the next section before this becomes 2 hours long. Which is all about items. I want to take a step back for a moment to acknowledge another hot topic in the community right now, and that is the oversaturation of items and gold. Between bots, gold farmers, and a min-max oriented player base, there's just so many items pouring into the game every day, and it's been known for a while that we're massively overdue for an item sync. So why not blend that item sync into a new skill? Well, they tried that when they proposed warding. The problem is that it was so obviously an item sync first and a skill second that players were turned off by it. At least, that's a huge reason why I was turned off by it. So how do you reverse that feeling? By making that item sync an investment into the returns on the skill, and not just a requirement to do said skill. And let me explain a little bit. So, I've mentioned before that you'd be able to get a crew. Now, if we make every member of your crew fully gearable in items that the player themselves can wear, you would allow for your crew to be equipped with Bandos, AGS, Fury, all these high-tier items that honestly are way oversaturated in the game. But why would you want to do this? Because just like every aspect of the game, the more you invest into your money-making method, the more money you'll make. The efficiency of your crew will directly impact the speed at which you can explore and complete activities. For some activities, such as the Kraken encounter, there'll be an expected benchmark for your crew to defeat it. Higher tier activities will yield better rewards. Plain and simple. That being said, however, nothing will require a min-maxed crew. You could expect to do the highest tier content with what players would traditionally refer to as welfare gear. But just like bossing, the gains per hour will be drastically lower if you're not spending a pretty penny on your crew. Just imagine all the good for the economy to have people dumping multiple Bandos armor sets into their crew, never to get them back. Again, just like the rest of Old School, you don't need to min-max, but it's there to reward those who do. And it simultaneously gives purpose to the multiples of high-tier gear that people have weighing down their banks. But aside from high-tier gear, many resources also need a sync as well. And while one skill can't possibly give every sync that we need, we can give purpose to some of the more useless items in the game. For example, most regular logs barely have any value, and by regular I don't mean normal logs, I mean willow logs, maple logs, yew logs. Let's look at redwood logs, for example. Redwood logs are currently 294 coins apiece at the time of recording this, and they are a tier 90 log. A total joke. Repurposing these logs into planks could fix that issue and make woodcutting into a much more viable AFK moneymaker again. As for new items, I've already suggested a whole new category of fish, the tropical fish. But how about different tiers of cave moss that could be used to make potions that would boost your gathering skills by invisible levels? Or how about various tiers of cannonballs that have always been teased over in Keldagrip? What about making storage chests for ores, logs, and fish? And possibly new Slayer creatures. Did I hear someone say the mostly harmless sirens? I can literally go on forever on new items, but I want to hear what some of you guys have to say. Alrighty, before I finally wrap things up here, there's just one thing I want to go over that I completely forgot to script out, and that is PvP. So, initially the devs wanted to have some PvP aspect to sailing, and I agree with them because PvP has been neglected for far too long. But I'm not much of a PKer, so I gotta say when I wrote this, it wasn't fresh in my mind. But I did have at least a little bit of an idea of what I thought it could be. So, here it is. What I envisioned is the entire southern waters of RuneScape would basically become a new wilderness, and you could hunt players down ship to ship, lowering each other's hull integrity to a point where you could board their ship. Once you boarded their ship, your crew would fight their crew, and you would fight them, and that's about as far as I got. I don't know how the loot should work, what happens if the crews win, or die, do you lose that crew member and the items they had disappears? Does the other person who was PKing get to loot those items? I mean, it can't be healthy for the game to have a PKer earn 7 sets of bandos in 1 kill. I don't know, PKers help me. But my idea is essentially go ship to ship first, then PK battle on the ships, and then loot somehow. There's so much more I could add on to this, but I need to start wrapping things up. So I'll leave you with this. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Old School RuneScape's 24th skill. It's time to conquer the seas of Gielinor with the release of the sailing skill. Head over to the nearest port and chat with the shipmaster to purchase your first blueprints. From there, pop on over to the slipway and start building away. Don't forget to stock up on plenty of long planks and nails, as well as a few crew members to give you a hand. Exploring has always been a part of RuneScape, so once you've finished your mighty vessel, it's time to set sail. With or without your crew, simply board your ship and take the helm. If you don't have any nautical know-how, don't worry, once at the helm, your ship becomes your player model, meaning moving is as simple as point, click, and move. While out on the open sea, there's no time limit to how long you can sail. Feel free to go wherever your ship can fit, but tread carefully. The waters of Gielinor can be quite treacherous. Your peaceful journey could be interrupted by the likes of pirates looking to plunder your booty. Sink them before they sink you, or simply flee. The option is yours, but pirates at sea are usually hauling treasure, so you may want to check it out. Pirates aren't all you need to worry about, however. Keep your eyes peeled for underwater caverns, vicious storms, stranded vessels, and a rare chance to take on Carthoon, the Kraken of legend, who has devoured riches beyond your wildest dreams. If wandering the world isn't your thing, there'll be plenty of new areas to unlock as you hone your sailing skills. These areas will unlock new resources to aid in your travels throughout the world. Cast out your nets for tropical fish, collect as much cave moss as you can, fire cannonballs made of gold, and so much more. It's time to earn your place amongst the captains of legend. The devs are ready. The players are ready. All of Gielinor is ready. Alright, this is getting out of control.